Welcome to the Jay Sizzle Basketball Podcast. And today, just the Jay Sizzle Podcast, but I'm going to be talking about basketball. And today, I'm going to be talking about some trades that I think can be made in the league. I want to be talking about some guys that have been going around the trade market recently, some names that have been brought up. Specifically, I'm going to be going over Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving and seeing, what certain teams can trade for them and what they can get back, and seeing how it would benefit each team. Different things like that. And really quick, before I get into this, I want to make sure that you guys go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like these videos, right? Give it that thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And go ahead and check out the website and the Instagram page as well. All that stuff for the website is just www.jsizzlepodcast.com. And then for the Instagram, it's just jsizzlepodcast, right? So make sure you go ahead and check those things out. All right, so let me start here. I'm going to start with Ben Simmons, right? Because, he's been trending a lot in terms of, trades, right? Ben Simmons does not want to play for this Philadelphia team. He said he will not suit up until he plays for another team, right? And it's been pretty obvious that he's, been reluctant to play for the 76ers team. All right. So let's say Ben Simmons, let's start with, one that I think a lot of people is getting a lot of heat recently. And according to Adrian Wojnarowski, he said that Ben Simmons, right, according to Woj, Ben Simmons there's an ability that Ben Simmons gets traded to the Brooklyn Nets for Kyrie Irving. So let's see if this trade would go through. So let's say Brooklyn looks at the situation right now and they say, okay, Kyrie's not going to play for us because he's not vaccinated. And Brooklyn is looking at it like, okay, we need to get something back, right? Brooklyn probably has a good enough team, honestly, and they probably know it to win without Kyrie, to win the whole thing without Kyrie. But just to have another guy there would give it that insurance, would give it that safety net where it's like, okay, now we have a much higher percent chance of winning, almost a definite in a way. So let's say they go and they trade. I shouldn't have said definite. That's my fault because no team's guaranteed to win a championship, but it'll give them a much better chance. Let me put it like that. Let's say Brooklyn wants to make a trade, right? They trade Kyrie Irving for Ben Simmons. So let's see if this trade goes through. So this trade goes through. It's a success, right? This trade goes through. The contracts line up. They're pretty much almost identical in contracts. It's only Kyrie's getting paid about $1 million more a year, a little more, almost 2 actually, so 1.9. And these contracts, like I said, almost identical. And if Kyrie Irving got traded to Philadelphia, I know he's, talked about retiring before, but I don't think he's going to do that. He came on Instagram Live and said he would not. And he said to multiple reporters he would not if he got traded from Brooklyn. He goes to Philadelphia. He plays at Philly. Philly gets a star point guard in there in return that will play every game and will suit up. And then Brooklyn comes back and gets a guy in Ben Simmons who will suit up for them. And it gives Brooklyn something that Brooklyn doesn't have right now. Defense. It gives Brooklyn a defensive anchor to rely on. And it makes Brooklyn, honestly, a lot tougher than they would be right now. And the reason for that is because as much as Ben Simmons needs to improve his scoring and his shooting, if Brooklyn's able to make a trade for him, it gives Brooklyn an advantage defensively almost against a lot of teams, which they don't have, right? That would give them the option to throw a number one arguably one of the best defenders in basketball, or not arguably, definitely one of the best defenders in basketball, arguably the best defender in basketball. That would give them an option to throw a guy like that on the opposing team's number one offensive option, which would make it scary because, Brooklyn offensively can score with anyone, if not outscore anyone. So that would make it scary. And then from the Philly perspective, right, you get Kyrie Irving, right? And you get a guy who would help out in terms of your depth, a guy who could help out in terms of your scoring, which has been a little lackluster so far this year. And I think it would be a good trade for both teams. So that's the Brooklyn situation that we're dealing with here. Let's talk about other teams that Ben Simmons has been rumored to be traded to and can be traded to, in my opinion. So let's go back to the trade machine here. I have a trade machine pulled up while I'm doing this, just to make sure that these trades go through, right? Because I need to make sure these trades go through. I don't want to tell you guys trades that won't go through, right? So look at the teams in the East, right? You got Philly, obviously. That's who Ben Simmons is on, who they would trade for. Brooklyn, I already went over them, but Milwaukee's not trading for him. The Knicks said they're not trading for him. The Hawks are not going to trade. The Heat have talked about trading for him, so let's go to the Heat, right? So let's see that Ben Simmons says, I want to go to Miami, right? What if you trade Ben Simmons to Miami for Kyle Lowry in return to Philly? And then Miami also has to give Philadelphia, let's see what the picks Miami has. 2024 first rounder and a 2025 first rounder, as well as a 2028 second rounder, because that's the closest. Actually, let's swap that out. Let's do the 2022 second rounder, and we'll remove the 2028 second rounder. Okay, so let's see. So this trade would go through, right? This trade would go through. The stipend on the draft picks can be figured out, right? They can cancel that out. So this trade will go through, right? So it would be Kyle Lowry going to Philly as well as a second rounder in 2022, a first rounder in 2025, and a first rounder in 2024. And Miami returns with Ben Simmons. They get Ben Simmons back. Good trade for both teams, in my opinion, right? Miami gets a guy in Ben Simmons who will help them defensively, who will help them in terms of playmaking, and who will, give them at least 14, 15 a game, which will help them a little bit in scoring. And Miami gets a young guy in Ben Simmons too, and they can continue to develop their youth, right? Because as great as Kyle Lowry is, he's getting to that age where we don't know what he's really going to be able to do anymore. So at least with a guy like Ben Simmons, I know he struggled in the playoffs. I know he struggles, in terms of shooting the basketball a lot. But at least he can give you 14, 15 a night with 7, 8 assists, 7, 8 rebounds, and provide you with some sort of, ability to continue to build a Miami and to continue to build a Miami and continue to have a contending team in Miami for a long time, right? Kyle Lowry keeps that window definitely a lot shorter. Ben Simmons would open up that window for a longer time. So that would be a trade I would make if I was Miami, in my opinion. So let's look at, right, we talked about Ben Simmons. Let's cancel out Miami here. Let's add another team to the mix. Boston, I don't think Boston would trade for him, right? They need more scoring, right? Boston is, Ben Simmons would not be the right fit for Boston. Wizards, no. Pacers, Hornets, Bulls, right? Raptors. Let's go down to the West because, right, I think that's pretty much all the teams in the East that would make a trade for him. Okay, so the West, right? Portland has been one that's been talked about. So let's go to Portland, right? So let's say Ben Simmons says I want to trade to Portland, right? Or it's not even going to be like that. They're just going to trade to whatever they can. So let's say Philly decides to trade Ben Simmons to Portland. I don't think you're going to get CJ McCollum back, to be honest with you. I think he's too high level of a player. So what if you go and you try to trade for Norman Powell? Norman Powell goes to Philly. Ben Simmons goes to Portland. But I think Portland would have to throw in some draft picks. So Portland throws in 2 first rounders. One's in 2022, one's in 2023. And they throw in a second rounder in 2022 as well. Let's see if this trade goes through. No, so a trade like this will not go through because Norman Powell recently just got signed to Portland, so he cannot be traded for 3 months. Financially, it would not work for Portland, right? They would be bringing in way too much money because they're paying McCollum and Lillard a lot. And it would also not work in terms of the draft picks, and that's one of those draft pick things that they cannot overwrite, right? So that trade would not work. And I don't think a CJ McCollum trade would work either. I don't think Portland would accept a CJ McCollum trade. I know Portland has been looking to get rid of CJ McCollum, and I know they've been looking to improve defensively, but I feel like if they want to trade CJ McCollum, I feel like they'll want a defensive guy who has a little bit of shooting in him at least to make a trade. So I don't think Ben Simmons would be the guy that Portland would trade for. So I think Portland's out of the Ben Simmons sweepstakes, in my opinion, because you're not getting Damian Lillard back if you're Philadelphia unless you trade Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, and Tyrese Maxey, which they're not going to do. So let's look at it more in depth, right? So Portland's an out, right? Utah's not going to trade for him. Phoenix will not trade for him. Denver, no. The Clippers will not. I don't see the Mavericks. I don't see the Mavericks making a trade for him, right? The one team I could see making a trade for him is Golden State, right? I know they said they were out of the sweepstakes, a couple months ago, but then I've heard some rumors from Woj that they are possibly back in the sweepstakes for Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons goes to Golden State, right? In return, Golden State gives him Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and I'm not giving first-round picks back if I'm Golden State because I'm already given enough. I'm giving a 2022 second, and I'm giving a 2025 second. I'm not giving up 2 seconds in the same year. See if this trade works. This trade would work. And I think from a Philly standpoint, you get 2 second-round picks. I don't know how useful those would be. Maybe you can turn those second-round picks and trade them, turn them into first-rounders, right? Swap them out. That's what teams do a lot. But you got Jonathan Kuminga back, who's a solid power forward, who's going to be a good player in this league. He's a rookie. He's young. He can develop on your team. And you bring in Andrew Wiggins, who will give you a scoring boost for Philly. And Philly needs a scoring boost, right? And then for the Warriors, you get back Ben Simmons. And I think you would put Ben Simmons kind of at that, small forward spot, probably. I think you would put him at a small forward spot. Let Steph handle the playmaking roles, and Ben Simmons, they switch off. It could take a lot of pressure off Steph's shoulders, right? It could allow Steph to even expand his game even more. And then Steph doesn't have to worry about playmaking too much. He can just worry about literally only scoring, because Ben Simmons would take that pressure off him. He would also take pressure off Steph on the defensive end, and Golden State would improve on the defensive end, which is somewhere where Golden State needs to improve if they were to make this trade for Ben Simmons. So I think it's a good trade for both teams, honestly. Right, so that's the Ben Simmons trade to Golden State. In my opinion, that would make the most sense. So let me go over one more team in the West that caught my eye that I think can make a trade for him, right? Minnesota, right? What if Minnesota, who is 2-0 right now, and they do look good, but they still have a lot of defensive struggles. They did bring in some guys on defense that help, Beverly, guys like that, but they still have a lot of defensive struggles that are going to, I think get worse over, as the season moves on. And what if Minnesota's like, okay, as much as we like D'Angelo Russell, as much as we like some of these young guys, we want to make a trade with one of these young guys and get back Ben Simmons to help us defensively, because we think if we can get that help with Ben Simmons defensively, it can push us over the top and allow us to get to the playoffs and be a really good team for a long time. So what if Philly says we're trading Ben Simmons in Minnesota, and Minnesota says we'll give you back D'Angelo Russell? Straight up trade for Ben Simmons and D'Angelo Russell. That trade is accepted. And so let's look at the Philly standpoint, right? Philly gets an offensive weapon that can shoot the ball, help space the floor for Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, and also gives them a good enough playmaking option, right, to help get other guys involved. Not as good as Ben Simmons in terms of playmaking, but it's good enough. And then the Minnesota in return gets back Ben Simmons. You have to give up D'Angelo Russell. But when you get back Ben Simmons, I think you have enough scoring still with Malik Beasley, Karl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards. And then you bring in a defensive anchor, and you bring a guy like Ben Simmons in. He could really kind of transition your defense into a very respectable and good defense, which would give Minnesota a lot more options to compete against really good teams, in my opinion. And, it just gives Minnesota the defensive boost that they need, because they have enough offensively. Even if they get rid of Russell for Simmons, yes, you lose on offense, but you win on defense, and you have enough offense even without Russell and Ben Simmons there. But you get the big win on defense, which really helps your team a lot, right? You need defense, right? Minnesota the last couple of years has been one of the better offensive teams, but defensively they've been one of the worst teams in the league, and that's really hurt them and not allowed them to make an adjustment in terms of, winning more games. So that's it for Ben Simmons, right? And I said I wanted to talk about Kyrie, but I think the Kyrie to Ben Simmons trade is honestly the only trade that Brooklyn's going to be able to get out of Kyrie, because I think you have two teams that are trying to trade for guys that just want to get out of their situation, and if you trade for him, it might end up being okay. I don't think any other team would honestly make the trade for Kyrie. To be honest with you, I don't think any teams are really, going to try that. I think they're too scared. I think Philly will try just because they're giving up Ben Simmons, a guy that's going to leave anyway. So I think it makes sense there. So on this trade machine, right, or on this, trade machine website, I'll go over this for the next couple minutes before I wrap it up. They have, because it's millions of people visit this website every month, it says here, and they have a bunch of guys on this website that, are trending, right, as being traded. And, I see a bunch of guys, right? There's a whole list. There's like 50 guys here, and they're in order, right? And the number one guy is Ben Simmons, of course, right? Trending and being traded, right? A lot of people are using him in a trade machine. But we already went over Ben Simmons, right? So let's go over some more guys. How about we go over the number 3 guy here on this trade machine here in terms of trending? How about we go over Kristaps Porzingis, which is a guy that I know a lot of Mavericks fans want to see him get traded, right? So let's go to Dallas here. Let's say Dallas decides they want to trade Kristaps Porzingis, which I know they've tried to it many times and have not, successfully done so. A team that I could see trying to make a trade for Porzingis, or taking in Porzingis and getting a positive impact from him, would be a team like Chicago, right? And I think Chicago needs a little more depth at that power forward spot. So let's say Chicago makes a trade for Kristaps Porzingis, and Chicago says, as much as we like Patrick Williams, and I'm a fan of Patrick Williams, they say, we don't think he'll develop. Let's say they think he won't develop enough on offense, and they want to trade Patrick Williams straight up for Kristaps Porzingis. So let's see here. Okay, no. So that trade would not work, right? And a lot of other players, Chicago does not have the cap room to trade for Porzingis unless they give up LaVine, Lonzo, or DeRozan, and which is one thing that they're not doing. Honestly, I'm looking at it from a perspective where Chicago thinks Patrick Williams won't develop on offense, but I think he will. And even if they don't think he develops on offense, they probably might not even trade him for a guy like Porzingis, right? Too injury prone, hasn't really proven himself in the league yet, to be honest with you. So I don't think so. So Kristaps Porzingis, let's say Porzingis wants to go to Golden State. That's a good one there. And let's say Golden State's willing to give up Andrew Wiggins for Kristaps Porzingis. Trade to the Mavericks. Porzingis goes to the Warriors. So this trade goes through. Now, this I think is honestly a good trade for both teams. I know Porzingis is injury prone, but so is Andrew Wiggins. And if you go into Golden State, you get a guy like Porzingis. He can help stretch the floor. He can shoot the ball. And, he just provides Golden State with another shooter. Golden State, the only thing you lose giving up Andrew Wiggins is defense, right? Andrew Wiggins has really improved his defensive game the last couple of years, especially since he got to Golden State, and you lose defense. So, I don't know. I think it's an interesting trade. The salaries are pretty much the same. They're literally $500,000 off. So, the trade 100% works. Doesn't really impact anybody's cap space at all. And I think it's a good trade for both teams, in my opinion, right? And I think, honestly, hear me out for a second. This is going to sound crazy. I think Porzingis, instead of playing power forward, would start at center for this team. I know Porzingis normally plays power forward, but he would start at center. You would have Draymond at power forward, Porzingis at center. At the small forward spot, you would have maybe Jordan Poole. Maybe you can insert Jordan Poole in there. Hopefully just maybe you go undersized and you just have enough scoring. Then you have Steph and Clay when Clay comes back. So you would have enough scoring on that team. Defensively, you would lose a little bit, but you're still a solid defensive team overall because you have a lot of guys on that end of the floor that can play still. So, but then offensively, you add more shooting, you add more scoring. I think it's a good trade for Golden State, in my opinion. So one more trade I want to go over here really quick before I wrap it up. I want to go over a Colin Sexton trade, right? Because I know Cleveland's been very interested in trading for Colin Sexton, and a lot of teams have shown interest in Colin Sexton. Cleveland feels like Darius Garland is their future point guard, and they feel like Darius Garland is the guy that's going to lead this team to success down the line if they can add more guys to build around. They don't want Colin Sexton anymore. They don't feel like he fits well next to Garland's game, and they feel like Garland's better. And honestly, I don't disagree with them. I think Garland's a better player than Sexton, right? Scoring-wise, he's not as good, but he's a better defender, and he's a much better passer. Sexton's the type of guy who, in his prime, is going to give you 24 points a night with 2 or 3 assists, and he doesn't really give you much defense. Garland's the type of guy who, in his prime, will probably give you 20, 21 points a game with 7.5 assists, 8 assists, and give you defense. I would rather have that, and I think that works more for what Cleveland's trying to build around and who they have on their team. So let's say you're looking at a Colin Sexton trade, right? And Cleveland says, we want to trade Colin Sexton. Okay, so let's see. Let me look at a team here. The New York Knicks are interested in trading for Colin Sexton. I think it's a good team, honestly, to trade for Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton goes to the Knicks. And in return, the Knicks sent to the Cavaliers, right? The Knicks sent Kevin Knox, who I know he hasn't been great in his career so far, but maybe the Cavaliers believe that they can turn his career around. It could be a Knicks thing. It could be he doesn't like playing in New York. It could, whatever it is. Maybe Cleveland believes that they can turn his career around, so they would go and trade for a young guy who still has potential in this league, in my opinion. Still very talented. He can be a good player. Maybe a new situation would help, because a lot of times you see these young guys go to these new situations and they go crazy. They don't get a lot of minutes in the old situation, or they're not playing well, and they go to these new teams and they play great. Cavaliers in return get Kevin Knox. They get Quentin Grimes, who the Knicks just drafted at 25, who looks like he could be a solid player in this league. You get a 2023 first-round pick if you're the Cavs. You get a 2022 second-round pick. You get a 2022 first-round pick, and you get a 2022 first-round pick. You get 2 2022 first-round picks, a 2023 first-round pick, and a 2022 second-round pick. That means the Knicks would have 1 pick in the draft for this upcoming year left. It would be a second-round pick. But in return, if you're Cleveland, you get 2 young guys, especially one young guy who hasn't proven himself yet in Quentin Grimes, but has potential in this league, right? And I know the Cavs, talked about liking him. They wanted to take him in the second round, but he was already taken. Then you get Kevin Knox in return, who maybe the Cavs, like I said, feel that they can turn his game around. And you get 2 first-round picks in 2022, a first round in 2023, and a second round in 2022. I think Cleveland would accept this trade for Colin Sexton, to be honest. I know Colin Sexton scores 23, 24 a night, but we can't just sit up on that and say, okay, that makes him a really good player. He's a good player, but he still hasn't improved defensively. He hasn't improved playmaking. And the Cavaliers, I know, have talked about they just want to get rid of him. They like him, but they want to they want to move on. They want something different. They want Darius Garland to be the future, like I said earlier, of that team. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. That's who they're building off. And Isaac Okoro. Those 3 guys. Then they bring in a guy like Quentin Grimes who can play shooting guard next to Darius Garland eventually. They got all those first round draft picks from the Knicks. They could draft good players. They get the second round picks. Maybe they can swap them out and trade a bunch of their second rounders for a first rounder, and they get Kevin Knox, who they can hopefully maybe try to develop and give him some quality minutes and see what he can do. I think it's a good trade for Cleveland. I do. I think it helps their youth development, and I think it brings in something that would honestly help them. Then, from the other perspective, for the Knicks, I think it helps the Knicks a lot, because I think the Knicks need another scorer on their team. As much as their scoring has improved, and it really has improved this year, I think they could use one more scorer. And imagine if you add Colin Sexton, and you have a starting lineup of Kemba Walker, Colin Sexton, R.J. Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. You have enough scoring, you have enough defense, you have enough rebounding, you have enough playmaking now, right? Because Kemba's a good enough playmaker to play the point guard spot. Then you have Randle playmaking, who's a good playmaker. R.J. gets like 4 assists a game, and then you bring in Sexton, who gets 3 or 4 assists a game. Playmaking, you're fine. And then off the bench, you have Rose, a veteran point guard. You're fine playmaking-wise, which is something that the Knicks want to improve a little bit. They would improve that enough if they got Colin Sexton. Scoring-wise, the Knicks still want to improve a little bit. Colin Sexton would help you there. And yeah, I just think it's a good trade for the Knicks and the Cavs. But for the Knicks, in terms of a team that's trying to win right now and compete for a championship, it would give the Knicks a bigger door to compete for a championship for a longer time, right? It opens up that door for a longer time, right? The Knicks right now, with their current roster, I think if RJ develops into a really good player, which I think he will, I think the Knicks can be contenders in the next couple of years. I really do, right? I think they're one of the young future teams in this league. But if they go out and they add Colin Sexton, who fills the holes that they desperately need, Okay, and then we're looking at a team that's probably definitely contenders in the next couple of years. So let's see what happens, right? Let's see if a trade like this goes through. But I know Collin Sexton's name's been tossed around a lot in Cleveland, and I know they want to, like I said, they want to trade him. So I think this is a good trade for Cleveland. They get back youth and draft picks. They get back youth and players, and they have to give up Collin Sexton, who's a guy they want to get rid of anyway, and they try to give him to a lot of other teams, and a lot of other teams are not willing to give back a lot. So this is a good enough trade for both teams, in my opinion, and it improves the Knicks right now. It hurts the Cavaliers right now, but it improves the Cavaliers looking forward. So let's see what happens. So that's going to wrap it up. I know today was kind of a weird podcast, and I know it was a little different, but I wanted to make sure I got in a trade podcast for you guys. I'll do more throughout the season, especially when there's big trades. We'll do podcasts and talk about those trades, but I'll do more trade, machine type of podcasts moving forward here because I know, the NBA is a very trade-heavy league, and we want to see a lot of trades happen. It makes the league more exciting. So make sure you guys go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel again, like I mentioned earlier, and I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Have a good one.